So for this section of the video, I'm just going to be recording a couple of test hands just to show you how the deck plays, what you want to do turn one, things like that. Here's the deck. We are running 3 of the white, the red, and the blue. Only running 1 of the green because it is dead in the hand a lot of the time. We run the danger package because they are very good discard fodder, and they also have levels 3 and 7. 7 with Tsuchinoko and Jackalope and Nessie. So those are very convenient levels to Xyz summon with because your mechs are rank 7, rank 3, and rank 4, and rank 5. We are also running the Diviner package, which is 3 Diviner of the Herald and a Trias Hierarchia. So what these do is Diviner sends a fairy from the deck to the graveyard, and then when she is tributed, she can special summon a level 2 or lower fairy from the hand or deck. So what you do is you send your Trias Hierarchia. He will tribute a monster on the field. He'll tribute a fairy monster on the field even. And that'll activate Diviner's second effect to special summon a level 2 or lower fairy. And that will be Alphan. So what you end up with is a Trios on the board with an Alphan on the board as well. The rest is just going second staples, besides 1 for 1. 1 for 1 is pretty much another way to summon out your Alphan. Lightning Storm is a going second card. Back row removal in Feather Duster. This triple tactics talent helps with hand traps. Dark Ruler No More helps with established boards already, so it's another turn 2 card. Twin Twisters, another back row removal. Reborn, staple. Foolish Burial, staple, I guess. Terraforming is a fourth copy of your field even. And I'm maxing out on E-Tally. Extra deck, we run the Zeus, of course, because we are an Xyz deck, and Zeus pops off in Xyz decks. Down a Magician, just to help out with the Zeus. The Lyrilusk is our rank 1 of choice, because she can attack directly, and then overlay into Zeus in the main phase 2. Saryuja is something that I play a lot with. His 4 material effect. He can draw 4 cards, then place 3 back to the deck. It's very good for digging through the deck if you're very desperate. And also his 3-mat effect allows him to special summon a monster from the hand. So he is very useful in trying to find your last mech when you have a field. Megaclops. Megaclops is our second boss monster. He is made with 3 Xyz monsters on the field, which is very easily accessible because once Magnus is outed, you will have 3 Xyz monsters on board. And what Megaclops does is that he is unaffected by other monsters' effects, except those of Xyz monsters. Can't be destroyed by battle except with an Xyz monster. And when you have an Xyz monster in your graveyard, you can overlay using one of your opponent's cards on the field. So you special summon that monster from the graveyard, attach that opponent's card to it as material. And on top of that, he has a whopping 4,000 attack. So let's just play out a typical hand here. We have a red layer in our hand, we have an Alphan in our hand, and we have a white layer in our hand as well. So what we will be doing is special summoning the red layer with our Cyber Dragon effect. That's because we want to keep our normal summon for our Alphan. Now we do have a 1 for 1 here just to preserve our normal summon, but I'm going to just be using the normal summon just for demonstration purposes. Alphan here, we're going to activate his second effect. Now what you could do here is bait out a hand trap with 1 for 1. We're not going to be doing that, just to show you a typical combo. So we are going to play into the hand trap. We're going to activate our second effect. Here people will probably use Maxi or Ash to prevent the summon of anything. So here we're going to choose our blue. We want to summon the blue out, so we get access to our field immediately. We're going to choose red as well, so we can summon any of the Super Quants that we send to the grave. That allows us to Xyz summon. And white here, if we send it to the grave, then we will have another Alphan for our next play. So now, because we're in EDO Pro and we're just testing our hands, we can actually choose which one we want to pick off of our Alphan. You won't be able to choose this normally. It should be random normally. But for demonstration purposes, we're just going to be saying that we got lucky, we managed to find the blue on our search. We managed to find and summon the blue. So here comes the blue. Find the blue, summon the blue. Wow, we summoned our blue. We managed to search our field, activate this chain link 1 even. So you manage to chain block with our white layer and our red layer. Red layer will summon out our white layer, and our white layer will grab another Alphan from the deck. Here comes the field. Now we activate the field, and we have 3 different Super Quants on the field. We Xyz summon with them. Doesn't matter what we send at this point. Here comes our red mech. Discard another one. Here comes our blue mech. And discard again. Here comes our white mech. And now we have a 6-map Magnus waiting for us. Now, if you're playing someone who chose to go blind second, I would be very wary of making Magnus here, because they generally run kaijus who can tribute over and out your Magnus very easily. And in that case, I will just sit on these small mechs, because they do offer disruption as well. So our blue mech will destroy spell and trap cards on the field, and if it has a blue as its pilot, or as its Xyz material, then this is also a quick effect. White negates face-up monsters on the field effects until the end of this turn, and red destroys monsters on the field. And green is, let me find green. Green is pretty much a Book of Moon, and they all share, if they have their corresponding pilot, then they all become quick effects. So here I'm just going to make the Magnus. 6-map Magnus, here we come. We're going to make it in our far right zone. And that will prevent any interaction from the extra main zone. Wait, the extra monster zone even, not the extra main zone. So this will prevent any effects from Geonator if you ever do run into that. I don't think it's a popular card in Master Duel. It used to be in the TCG, I think, at some point. And Anima Relinquished as well. And also it stops your opponent from using whichever the Chimera Tech one that they use to summon using a monster in the extra zone. So what you can do is actually purposefully summon it into the extra zone and then link it away into a gravity controller. Now, what you want to do with this is generally to trigger its floating effect into 3 Xyz monsters. And that'll allow you to summon out your Megaclops if you really would rather have Megaclops over your Magnus. Here's a really good hand. You have access to your blue through Emergency Teleport, and you have access to an Alphan through your Diviner. So I'm going to activate Emergency Teleport, summon out our blue, They could possibly hand trap here. But we're going to forget about it for now. Search out our field. Now we already have a field in hand, but we're just going to ignore it, just for the demonstration. Add a field. Now it can also be a good play to add another field if you think that they're going to out it immediately. So if he had a black row removal in his back row right now, and you think he's going to destroy your field, then maybe it's a good idea to add another field. So we're going to get off our alpha now. So summon Diviner, send our Trias, if I can find it, there you go. Send our Trias, activate the Trias from the graveyard. Now what this will do is it will tribute up to 3 fairy monsters on the field. We only choose 1 here because, well, we just want to tribute the Diviner to activate its second effect. So when Diviner is tributed, he special summons our Alpha out. So we tribute. Now we have a Trias on our field. And now we will grab our Alpha onto the field as well. Now at this point, since we have a Super Quant on the field, we can actually use its first effect to change the level of the Trias to a level 3 hit or a level 1 hit. We're going to choose the level 3 because we think we are going to Xyz summon with it. Activate second effect. We're going to choose a red because we have our field in hand already. And we want more monsters on board. So we choose our red. We will choose our green here because we've already used the search effect of blue. And white just to grab another Alphan. So let's say we summoned our white out. Okay. So we need board presence at the moment. So red layer is our priority. We're going to summon the green mount. Green, here we go. And now we have 3 different... Excuse me. We should have also milled out the white. We should have sent another white so we had another Alphan in hand. I didn't because I'm a dummy. And that notification distracted me. So, anyways, we have 3 different Super Quant names on the field. We are just going to Xyz summon normally with these 2. Just to save our hand. And also to get extra materials on our Magnus. So here we will make a white mech. Oh, I guess we can actually discard and grab our Alpha anyways. So yeah, we'll activate that. Right, we have an Alpha in our hand. And if your hand is running low already, then you could have used that Alphan as discard fodder. We're okay for now. So we're going to send our Diviner, overlay into a green mech. And here we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 material Magnus. Now, it's not always hunky-dory. You will get hands where you won't be able to find a blue or a field. So here I'm just going to show off. Less than stellar hand. So I guess we managed to start off our plays with Trias. So let's just say we do find our Alphan. Summon up the Trias. And then into an Alphan. Here we can go into a rank 1 Xyz and sit on our Lyrilusk as a defensive play. Or we can gamble to try and find our blue. I generally like trying to gamble. Well, I don't like gambling, but In you go, I'll allow it. So we're going to activate our second effect. And we're going to choose our blue because we want to find our blue's summon effect to search the field with. Red to grab some board presence. And white to search another Alphan if we do send it to grave. So, let's just say that we do not find the blue. We find our... Let's say we find our red instead. So, red, we're going to activate it on summon effect, grab a white layer back to hand. Maybe not actually. We already have enough white layers on our hand, so we'll grab a blue. And then we will activate our white layers effect to grab another Alphan for next turn. And we could chain block with blue as well. Not really much point here though, so I'll leave that. So I'm going to grab the Alphan back. And honestly, I don't think there's much else we can do here. Oh, I guess we can actually. Since we have white in our hand, we can activate white. Send our red. Yeah, send our red? Yeah, send our red. And then summon out our white layer. And that'll allow us to trigger our red layer's grave effect to special summon a monster in the grave. So we will special summon our white here. We don't want to use white layer's effect because we don't have another white layer in our deck. What we want to do is Xyz summon both of our level 7s into our white mech. So, two level 7s on board. White mech. And I think that's the extent of what we can do with our players right now. It's not ideal, but yeah, I think we have one disruption. Well, actually, yeah, we only have one disruption. So when our hands aren't great, they don't tend to go very well for us. I'm also realizing now that since we had so many white layers on our hand, we could have just sent a green with our Alphan. So if we sent the green to our graveyard with the Alphan, we could have sent a white layer in our hand to the grave, and then added Alphan back to our hand with the white layer there, and also dug through our deck by one in case our next card was in fact the field. I'm going to show you a replay from Gold 1. It's not the greatest rank, and honestly this guy's build is pretty atrocious as well, but I think this duel is pretty emblematic of how you want to play this deck. So here we go. So let's have a look at our hand. We have Alphan and a Diviner. We have an Essie. We have a white layer, and we have our field. So we don't need to gamble looking for a blue with our Alphan, since we have the field in hand already. And I think at this point I don't feel any delay. So I opt not to check for hand traps with Nessie. So out comes Diviner, tries Hierarchica, Tribute, Diviner, special summons our Alphan. Alphan will activate, and we search for red, blue, and white. We find our red, grab our white from the graveyard into our hand, and then we chain block with the blue, just in case. We probably should have put the blue as chain link 3 here. That was just me being a dummy. So here comes our Alphan from our white. We activate the field, discard a Nessie, because the Nessie will grab back something, grab back another Jackalope for us. White layer sends our red mech, and because the red mech has our red layer as an Xyz material, now that red layers hit the graveyard, it can use its grave effect to special summon our blue. And I think I send a green here, right? Yeah, I send a green because I have an extra white in hand and all these Alphans, so I can dig through the deck for one more. Find a diviner, it's not the greatest. And now we have our second name, our second mech for Magnus. And we'll have the third name with our blue. Oh yeah, Jackalope will special summon after being discarded. And then we have 2 materials for our blue mech. And then we go into Magnus. Now we have a 6-map Magnus. We're sitting pretty. And this is where I realised that this guy is not playing a good deck. I've never seen this card before, Dragonmaid Welcome. He also uses his Tinkek, and Tinkek is pretty much the only out for Dragonmaids besides this card, I guess. Because it gives them 2000 attack on their, well, whatever Dragonmaid they summon. And this guy, of course, is weak to beat sticks. So he wastes his Tinkek, and I know that he doesn't know what he's doing with this deck at that point. And he sets and passes. So since I know that he doesn't know what he's doing with his deck, I will go into an Alphant. Decide to go into the rank 1, which is our Lyrilusk. And from here, I decide to go into Zeus because I don't feel delay again, and I know that they don't really know what they're doing. So I go into the Zeus here, using Down of Magician into a format Zeus. Clear the board, and they are stuck with 1 card in hand. And I have a Call by the Grave set as well. They used Polar Dragonmaid to send their fusion. Grab back the fusion. So now I know what's in their hand. A Call by to prevent their summon effect on their Kitchen Dragonmaid. Because I know that there are only 2 Dragonmaids in here. The Kitchen Dragonmaid and the Tinkek. Now, I was probably more scared of the Tinkek at this point, but I didn't want them getting more resources using Kitchen Dragonmaid's effect. Yeah, I didn't want them getting more. Well, actually, it didn't matter because I have a 6-map Magnus here. So maybe I probably should have just sent the Tinkek instead. Okay, here comes the Tinkek. They try to fuse with the Tinkek, and I know they only have 2 things to fuse with, and they can't fuse with less than 2 monsters. So at least I don't think so. Yeah, this guy only fuses from hand or field. He only has 2 monsters, and so I decide to bounce this, and so he can't fuse anymore. Changeover fizzles out, and they scoop. So I think that was pretty emblematic of what you want to do. Set up Magnus turn 1, and then Zeus their field afterwards. So here I'm going to be showing off Duel versus Virtual World. We managed to go first, fortunately, because VFD is just not playable through turn 1, unfortunately, with this deck. So we're very thankful that we get turn 1. We found an Alphant and a red layer, so we need to find a field next. Here we are searching for the blue, but unfortunately we get ashed here. So Alphant gets us nothing, and because we don't want to leave our field with just a red layer, because we don't know whether they can OTK us next turn through red, we try to dig through our deck with Nessie to see if we can find anything useful. Unfortunately, Nessie gets discarded, but we get another try with Jackalope. Jackalope manages to send our Scythe. Now, I do not use Scythe Lock anymore, mostly because I found that I faced a lot of Eldritch decks later on, which Scythe doesn't really do much against. But in other metas, I would probably use Scythe a lot more. So we send Scythe. We That's right. We send our red to the grave to try and summon our white from hand. But his Cyframe gear gammas are white here. So white does not get its board presence. But red will summon the white anyways, since white is in our graveyard. White will grab back an Alphan, and then we summon our white to the field in defense mode. And now they only have 3 cards to work with. We've managed to get through 2 disruptions, so we are pretty confident that we're clear for next turn. Now we get to see what they play. We see that they play the virtual world, so we are very thankful that they didn't manage to make VFD turn 1 against us, because we don't have any ways to play through that. They make the Juju. If they made the Shen Shen and passed, then we would have been in trouble because we need all of our cards in grave. But thankfully they did not have access to the Shen Shen. So they make the Juju and pass. After destroying our Jackalope, of course. We go into our Diviner here to start off our Alphan plays. Put Trias on board. And since we have Trias and a Super Quant on our field, we will make the Trias level 7 so we can Xyz someone with it. Here we're looking for our blue here, so we can search the field, but we do not. We find the green instead. Blue will shuffle back reds because we want to find reds later on, right? Oh, I see. We shuffle back the Alphan here because we want it live for 1/1. 1/1 does activate and summon from the hand or deck. But I think we still want to keep it live, and we want to keep Diviner of the Herald live as well. Because Diviner of the Herald summons through the deck, I think? Hand or deck. Even so, it keeps them live. So we summon an Alphan with our green here. We Xyz summon into our white mech. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we make a Saryuja here to try and dig through our deck for a field. I'm realizing now in post that I should have negated the Juju's effect with the white mech before special summoning out the Saryuja. That was a silly mistake on my part. If I had negated Juju, I could have just destroyed it this turn and not worried about it later on. Because we are trying to make Magnus as quickly as possible, because if they make a Shen Shen next turn, then we are really screwed. So with Saryuja, we managed to find an emergency teleport and a field as well. We summon out our blue to search with. We use blue search effect. We search, and we find our Alphan Spike here. Now, Alphan Spike is a separate way to find out your field. You can banish this card and 1 Super Quantal Fairy Alphan from your graveyard, and then you can just activate a field from your deck, which is very handy, as long as you have a way to discard it. So we just activate the field that we found through Saryuja's effect, and we summon our blue mech here. Now we have 2 ways to 2 mechs to summon our Magnus. We attack into the Juju just for damage, and then we leave it there. He tries to destroy our blue mech, which is fine. We send our blue, we detach here to destroy the back row before our blue mech dies. Shuffle back greens, whites, and our blue, I think. Just to keep them alive for Alphan. And here we have access to our green mech to finally make Magnus. He maxes, good on him. Here we finally make our green mech. And then we have our third mech for Magnus. Here comes the format Magnus. We attack just for the damage, because we know that we don't have lethal here. We decide not to spin and leave our Magnus at 3 materials and be affected by everything. He tries to Qinglong our Magnus, not knowing what it does. Which is nothing, by the way. He makes a Shen Shen. Shen Shen can't attack over our Magnus at the moment. Into a Stardust Charge, seeing what he can draw into. Chuche will destroy our Saryuja. So at this point he's really struggling to find an out for Magnus, which I don't blame him for. Goes into the Vermilion Dragon mech, once again not understanding that Magnus is unaffected by it. So he's looking really desperate at the moment, trying to find an out for this card. I draw into the Foolish Burial, don't do anything with it. I just attack into Shen Shen because Foolish will not do anything while Shen Shen's on board, I think. Oh, it wouldn't matter anyway, because Foolish Burial only sends from deck. Summon the Roshi out into a level 9 Synchro. Sends out the Cloud Castle. Summons out the Shen Shen again. Into the VFD. And luckily I have Magnus on board already, so VFD does not affect it. So I attack into it because Magnus is already on board already, so he's unaffected by VFD's effect. Attack into the VFD. He sets and passes because he doesn't have any answers to me at the moment. Attack into a Shen Shen. And now he only has Juju on board. Now I can't really do anything to this Juju except spin it. And that's what I opt to do. Okay, I Foolish Barrel a red here to summon the blue. Right, to bait out a Chuche, right. Do I? I don't think that mattered in the end anyway. Oh, that's right, because I needed the reds back into rotation. Because I had 2 reds in the grave and 1 red in hand. I would not be able to use it for Alphan. I activate the Alphan Spike that I mentioned earlier to activate the field. Spin back the Juju. And here I tribute summon the Magnus away and use Magnus's floating effect. Red layer will grab back another field just in case. And I summon out my 3 Xyz monsters. And we go into our Megaclops. I do have lethal. He's already used his Chuche. So yeah, I do have lethal here, but I decided to show off. Go into my red mech. And here I really should have just attacked in and won the game, but I opt to try and clear his board. And at the same time, when you try and use Megaclops' effect, your opponent takes half damage for the turn. So I screwed myself out of lethal here, just trying to show off. I use his Tuche as Xyz material for my Grampulse. Grampulse will destroy the Qinglong. And then I make another Magnus. Magnus is out format, so he's unaffected, but we do attack in. Don't have lethal. So they have another extra turn to figure out what they want to do. Special summons the Shen. Special summons the Lily. And he goes into Utopia Beyond, which is actually kind of scary for us. What Utopia Beyond does is he turns the attack of all monsters your opponent currently controls into 0. Now, Magnus is unaffected, but unfortunately, Megaclops is affected by Xyz monsters, and Utopia Beyond is an Xyz monster. So he can attack into this. Luckily, he doesn't have game just yet. Here I decide to spin the Break Sword because I'm very worried that he will make something scary with it. He attacks into my Megaclops. And here he makes a Zeus. And because our Magnus is now at 3 materials, he will die to a Zeus. So I decide to spin away the Zeus. He Zeuses himself. And now he has no more resources. But we do manage to float into our 3 Xyz monsters once again. And from here it's game really, because I do have a Super Quant to put into our mechs. I use Alphan just to ensure the win here. Doesn't really matter at this point. We've won the game. We shuffle back our Magnuses just in case. Put back our pilots into their mechs. Put the green in our hand into our Liger. Make another Magnus. This bit is just showing off this turn really, and then we just attack. Okay. So there was a bit of an iffy spot in the middle where I was just really just trying to show off. But that is something that you can do. You can just tribute summon away your Magnus or the gravity controller play that I've mentioned beforehand. We can just send away the Magnus and float into our 3 Xyz monsters for board presence or into our Megaclops if we deem Megaclops is necessary. And Megaclops being 4000 attack, he can make lethal very easily. For this chapter, I really want to talk about what we are weak against as a deck. I mentioned earlier that the field spell is a huge bottleneck of ours, and that goes the same for Alphan as well. If Alphan gets hand trapped, or if our field spell does not go off, we are going to be left with only our small mechs to preserve us. Now, the small mechs are very useful, they do offer disruption, but of course you have to be able to make those as well. And another weakness is that if we don't get turn 1, then we are probably not able to make any of our plays happen. So for example, if we have to try and play into a ton of floodgates that are set already, and we haven't made our Magnus, then we are probably going to have to wait until we find some kind of back row removal. And that goes the same with a lot of huge monster negate boards as well. What you have to consider as well is that the only in-archetype normal summon that we have that has the highest attack is 1600 off of our green. And green, we are not running at 3. So technically our highest attack normal summon is going to be 1200, which is going to be consistently found. So that can present problems versus walking floodgates with high stats. It's not just floodgates that can be problems. Any kind of disruption before we make our Magnus is going to be trouble for us. So that includes Ash Blossom, it includes Nibiru as well, before we've made our Magnus. Any means to stop Magnus from coming out turn 1 is going to give our life trouble. And even after you've made your Magnus, we are still weak to beat sticks, of course, and kaijus tributing our Magnus. And I know kaijus are very prevalent in pretty much every side deck going. And while I do enjoy playing Super Quants, I genuinely don't think the skill ceiling of it is very high. I think the addition of Zeus has really added a lot to this deck by giving us an extra board wipe. And while Magnus itself is pretty strong, like the 6-mat effect can just end games versus certain decks, you kind of just sit in a stalemate with a 3600 beat stick on board, just waiting for your opponent to out it with the kaiju. Now that does mean that if you're against the deck that has no outs to it, then you're sitting golden. But as time goes on and people get more competitive, I really don't think we stand much of a chance later on. With the prevalence of hand traps and Nibiru, Nibiru is not a solved problem as of yet. I know Crossout Designator is a card that exists at the moment, but it's still not consistent, I don't think. And even then, that's only just one disruption to get through. You need to find multiple ways to extend through different types of disruption versus modern Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment. And that can be really hard when you have to burn so much of your hand to find your Magnus. Speaking of floodgates, we can't actually utilize any of them, considering how widespread our types and attributes are. We are spread through machines, through psychics, through warriors, through spellcasters. You may be looking at Tikaboo and thinking that we might be able to use it, but unfortunately it also means that our Magnus won't actually be able to float into our 3 mechs. Maybe if you expect that they won't out it, then maybe you could run it, but I probably wouldn't myself. I know that you can play around Tikaboo by killing it with a blue mech before you actually start going into Magnus, but I think that's a lot of extra effort. I won't stop you, but that's just my personal preference. And we also need to consider that a lot of our very important effects activate in the grave, so things like Dimension Shifter or Macrocosmos or Shen will be very troublesome for us as well. Now, we do have access to a very, I want to say, obscure floodgate, which is And the Band Played On, which does feature some of my favourite monsters on it from the Symphonic Warrior archetype. But I probably wouldn't run it. It's very meta dependent. And in the end, it doesn't really help you get Magnus out first turn. It's a bit slow. Now, there are people who do advocate for a slower, more control-based build with more focus on the small mechs. I know there's even people that are experimenting with Eldritch. And honestly, I can't really comment on those. Those aren't really my focus. But I do think those are probably going to be more viable than Magnus Turbo in the future. But I just see so many Omni Negates nowadays, and I do think the writing is on the wall for Magnus Turbo variants, which is unfortunate, but the game has to evolve. Hopefully Super Quants get some kind of support to deal with all these disruptions nowadays, but I kind of doubt it. If you are looking to build the deck, I will nudge you in the direction of some engines. I've already mentioned the Diviner and the Danger Package. What I haven't mentioned thus far is Monster Gate. If you ever find that your Diviner gets ashed, You can use Monster Gate as an extender, as it will tribute, and this way you would get an extra summon and still get your Elfan on top of it as well. And along those same lines, Reasoning is also a tech that's been used for a long time in Super Quants. Because our main deck has a large variety of levels in it, we usually do summon something off of the Reasoning. But what you have to look out for with both of these cards is not having too many monsters in your deck that you don't want to summon off it. So that could be things like hand traps or even the dangers. When I first started playing Master Duel, I was using both Reasoning and the dangers, and I found myself summoning the dangers a lot, and I didn't want that. So eventually I did cut out the Reasoning and the Monster Gates in favour of the Danger package. Something to note here is that you can mill your Alphan Spike with both Monster Gate and Reasoning, and that could be a potential way to search out your field. And on top of those, you could use the Performage package, which utilises Trick Clown to make rank 4s with. Something else you could play with is the Brilliant Fusion package. Now, this is quite old. This is actually how I first learned to play the deck with, using both the Performage package and the Brilliant Fusion package. And since you do need to send a light monster from the deck to the graveyard, you can send your white layer, and that would allow you to search for an Alphan. And then you could normal summon Alphan with Seraphonite's effect. Or you could send a Trick Clown or a Damage Juggler for the extra body for a rank 4. It is kind of outdated now though, because you do have to run a literal Garnet, and also hope to not draw the Darlingtonia Cobra. So I guess that's 2 Garnets. So I'm going to show you what a hand might look like with the Brilliant Fusion package and the Performage package. So here, we do not have an Alphan. I just want you to pay attention to that. So we're going to summon our red layer because we need no monster in the field for it. And we are going to normal summon our Lone Fire. Now I want you to remember that we've normal summoned this turn. So our normal summon is gone. We're going to Lone Fire here. And we're going to summon out another Lone Fire just to thin our deck out. And again. And here we're going to summon our Offra Scorpio. I nearly clicked the wrong one there. Offra Scorpio. With Offra Scorpio, we're going to discard our Damage Juggler. We're just going to use it for discard fodder for Offra Scorpio here. And we're going to summon our Darlingtonia. Grab our Brilliant Fusion. We activate Brilliant Fusion. And we're going to summon Seraphonite. And this will allow us to send our Garnet. And whatever light we want. We could send our Trick Clown if we needed the extra summon on board. But we can actually search it with Juggler in our graveyard at the moment. And we need an Alphan as well. So we're actually going to send our white layer. So we have access to our Alphan. We're going to summon this in the extra zone because our field is actually quite full at the moment. So we're going to grab our Alphan. And what Seraphonite does is it allows you to have another normal summon. So we actually get to normal summon our Alphan in our hand. Here, I think I will Xyz with the 2 level 3s just to make some extra space on board. And I'm going to activate Alphan's effect. And I will choose the green here because we do have access to our Trick Clown. So that could be a rank 4 Xyz there. I'll choose a blue as well, just for the search. And a red, why not? So let's say we found our blue, actually. And with that, we could search the field if we didn't have it already. We're going to summon our green out. And we could activate our green here just to send away the white. We don't actually need the white at the moment, but I think I'll keep it in hand, actually. So we summon our green out. And here we will search our field. We are going to activate Juggler's effect in the graveyard to search out our Trick Clown. And since we have our field, And we actually have 2 extra bodies that we're not using at the moment. I might actually consider playing Magna. But if you notice, Seraphonite actually has level 5 on it as well. So we could Xyz summon with these 2. But I think since we have the field, I'm actually going to use Magna here so we can get extra draws. And then I'll leave Blue Laser effect. And then I can actually Xyz summon using the field here. So I will send away the Trick Clown. Now when Trick Clown is sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it. So I will use that to Xyz summon into our red mech. And what Magnum will do is give us a draw when you Xyz summon into a zone that it points to. When you Xyz summon a mech specifically at least. So we get an extra draw. We draw into our upstart. I'll take that. Okay, I know the field, that's fine. And I will send the extra field that we have and Xyz summon into our green. Get an extra draw. And now we actually have our 3 names for Magnus. But since I have a white, I'm just going to use that and maybe get an extra draw just for the fun of it. Or if we were actually quite desperate, we could have drew into something else. I think I will here discard the field and try and see what else we can find off the top. Another green layer, that's whatever. I will Xyz summon with this, just to draw 1 more. And now we actually have 4 mechs for our Magnus. So I will summon Magnus here, and I'll put this under the Magna Blaster as well. So if this gets destroyed, I can actually summon a white layer as well. And I also get an extra draw on top of that. If I was paying a bit more attention, I would have summoned the Blaster Magna in my right extra monster zone, just so I could put the Magnus in my far right zone, like we discussed earlier. But I won't lie, I've kind of forgotten how to use Magna recently because I've left him out of my deck lists a lot on purpose recently because he is kind of win more a lot of the time. But I like it in this variant because you do get a lot of extra bodies on the field with the Predaplants. So he is very easy to make and very easy to draw off of as well, as long as you have the field. There is an instant fusion and ready fusion package with cross sheep that allows you to search off your blue a lot more easily. That one though, it does need a lot of extra deck space, so I'm not partial to that one myself. There is synergy with the Brilliant Fusion package here because Darlingtonia Cobra can search out your Instant Fusion and your Ready Fusion. And with Instant Fusion, you get access to Millennium Eyes Restrict and 1000 Eyes Restrict. And both of those would help mitigate established boards and hand traps as well. And there is another starter in Piri Race Map. I think that's how you pronounce it. And that pretty much counts as another 3 copies of your Alphan. Now if you do run Piri Race Map, or if you find yourself normal summoning Alphan a lot on a clear board, you can run Gamma as well, since Alphan tributes itself. You will be left with a clear board to negate any ashes that they use. Protoss can provide a very powerful alternative win condition for the deck. You do fulfill his summoning condition just by resolving Alphan. The only downside is that you have to hard draw into him, and you do have to manage to resolve Alphan. And he's not great turn 1 because you have to figure out what your opponent is playing first as well. Eschatos also does essentially the same thing except with types over attributes. So if you do want to run one of these guys, then it would just be down to a meta call really. Scythe Lock is also very achievable in this deck. You could either set the Scythe or you could search it with our Dagda. And then in your opponent's turn, you can destroy the Scythe with your blue mech, as long as it has a blue layer as an Xyz material. Since we do run light fairies in White Layer and Alphan, we can use Herald of the Orange Light as well, along with Eva. If you've played against Drytrons and you know how annoying these guys are, in this deck we can use it to negate Nibiru, basically any hand traps that might get in our way, and Eva serves as a really good discard fodder as well for our field. Unfortunately, when you're in a top decking scenario, these can hurt to top deck, so I'll be very wary of that. I want to keep this video as timeless as possible, so I won't be including meta matchups in this video. Nonetheless, I hope you learned something. If you want a bit more informative commentary as well, I do stream on twitch.tv/FezdogTapir very occasionally. I got to Plat 1 with Speedroids this season, but I will be trying out Super Quants for my second account once again, just while I wait for the new Speedroid support and the new Synchron support in Synchro as well. Oh, and I know this is Xyz Festival time. Thank God I managed to put this video up for Xyz Festival. Maybe it'll drum up a bit of attention, who knows. Hopefully a bit more variety than Utopia. Bit of an Easter egg for the Power Rangers and Sentai fans out there. Each of the chapters is named after an episode from some of my favourite Power Rangers and Super Sentai series. So if you can name them all without looking them up, then nice one. Okay, that's me out. Cheers. Maybe I'll make another video in a couple of months, who knows.